All right, so today we are going to go over a player's data. Now, this is an athlete who is coming back from a knee surgery, actually. So, evaluating your arm strength, especially the beginning stage of a throwing program, building that athlete back up to game competition. It's not an arm injury. This player had a knee injury, so it's even more important to make sure that we're monitoring that recovery and that fatigue and everything that comes along with that. Just because there's going to be a different way this athlete's going to monitor their movement, they might be a little different. So are they fatiguing differently? So the first thing we're going to look at, obviously that arm score is looking fine. He's got a really high arm score. This is not a small player by any stretch of the means at 195 pounds, 274 pounds of strength. He's put a lot of work in that, even though he couldn't do everything we wanted to when he was obviously injured. We're able to do a lot of that arm strength work. So when he's coming back to throwing, we're able to set a really good foundation. And what we're seeing here is on that adjusted daily max, his fatigue score is actually taking some stuff away, but everything else is adding in. So we're seeing a good ability that the arm's in a good spot. But again, it's really important to monitor fatigue to know where this athlete's at. Next thing we're going to look at is our SVR, strength velocity ratio. We actually just had him hit a max velocity the other day, so he's gaining velocity. Again, it's a younger athlete, so we need to make sure that we actually are setting that foundation to build on top of where he was previously. So he's now throwing harder post-knee surgery than he was before, which is good. It's a combination of getting out of pain with that lower body, as well as building that arm strength. Then we're seeing the shoulder balance. We're right in that minimums. It used to be very imbalanced, more down towards the 0.7. So we use that knee injury time to really use the custom training to dial in and build that shoulder up. And then what we're seeing on arm strength is everything's meeting those minimums. He used to not be there, and now we're in a good spot. So again, we're seeing that improvement in the ability to throw the ball a little bit harder. And when we go into our recovery tab, we're seeing, it's been a little while since his previous ones there. He was at a little bit of a fatigue point. Now we're hitting big, huge strength gains. And these are doable so long as we're paying attention to that information and we're dialing it in based on that January 31st, right? So this is pretty recent, less than a week ago at the time of filming this, and we're seeing huge strength gains from that last one. And the big thing we're noticing is, again, we're seeing large amounts of strength loss from that throwing. Again, he's learning how to reuse that lower body, which is why especially, this is not just a way to maximize the arm recovery, but we want to know how the body's responding with that new movement pattern on the lower half. Not only that, but he's going to be absorbing force differently. He's going to be transferring force differently. So we need to know exactly what that body's doing and how it's impacting the arm. So despite him recovering extremely well, he is exhibiting a high amount of fatigue. So we need to take that into account when we're building this athlete back up. So with that, we also want to look at the analytics. And even though we're seeing a high amount of fatigue on those post exams, we are seeing a good continued trend upward. So we know we're going to keep getting that positive adaptation. On the post exam, we're seeing high amounts of fatigue on everything, right? So we want to make sure that we keep utilizing that athlete the correct way, building him up, and not forcing him into a position that he's going to be overthrowing and under recovering. So we want to make sure we're managing both the fresh exam and the post exam. So that is it in a nutshell. We want to make sure we're using this data as more than just in healthy athletes, more than just in arm injuries, but this is a good use case for when an athlete has a lower body injury. Make sure we're paying attention to this. Make sure we're using that to dial in the throwing programs so that we're not having setbacks. Even though it wasn't an arm injury, it was a lower body injury, we want to make sure we're using the data appropriately because it is going to adjust how that body is going to handle workload, which we're seeing here in the fatigue tab.